Here's a quick summary of the brain. Number 1. More than the sum of its parts. Cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem. Occipital, frontal, parietal, temporal. Thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala, hippocampus. Terminology or categories in this league are inescapable if you have ever tried to understand what is inarguably the most important and complicated object in the known universe. There's obviously nothing wrong with these words. There are of course different specialized parts of the brain, and understanding what exactly they do, how they cooperate with each other and the rest of the body, how they evolved over billions of years and so on, are all relevant areas for discussion and research. But if these parts and their properties were all there is to the brain story, then we wouldn't be giving it the lofty title of most important and complicated object. The brain is the sum of its parts. Of course, what else could anything ever be? In other words, there's nothing in the laws of physics or biology that prevent us from someday recreating the human brain with all of its features intact. But the brain does have some very strange emergent properties from the sum of its parts, properties that no other configuration of atoms in the known universe seems to give rise to. So you might think that the way in which its parts are organized is where the central mystery lies, but that might not exactly be the case. Number 2. The central mystery, the hard problem of consciousness. I'd made a separate explainer just on consciousness. Here's the link below. The reason why just the detailing of the different parts of the brain will always feel insufficient to us is this. Why does this very specific configuration of atoms in the universe give rise to the feature of being conscious, i.e. the quality of experiencing things? As Sam Harris often puts it, why the lights on in our head? The logical answer seems to be that there's likely some evolutionary advantage to being conscious, of actually experiencing hunger and pain and happiness instead of being just zombies about it on the inside. We're going to eventually figure out the circuitry that gives rise to consciousness. And this circuitry, of course, will be a more intricate version of what we already know about the neurobiology and neurochemistry of the brain. But if you take one quick look at our lived experience of the depth and breadth of emotions we go through at the everyday level or over a lifetime, does this bear any resemblance to the consciousness circuitry that a future neuroscience textbook might summarize? The details of the circuitry within the 1200 cubic centimeter kilo and a half brain of one mammalian species cannot simply be the full explanation for the phenomenon of consciousness. No wonder some serious philosophers and scientists have even proposed panpsychism, the notion that consciousness is a spectrum that goes all the way down to atoms. So then everything is just at least a little bit conscious. This is all just to say that the topic of this video, the brain, has gotten tied in with the phenomenon of consciousness for obvious reasons. But one of these two things is bigger than the other. And my bet is, it's not the brain. Number 3. Big numbers. The brain, as part of the broader nervous system, packs in quite the punch for its size. Some 86 billion neurons use electrochemical signals to talk to each other and form 100 trillion synaptic connections. These signals are carried by a network of about 5 million kilometers of membranous wiring packed in our skulls, which is, by the way, more than 10 times longer than all the highways on our planet. I could keep going on with these numbers. It did take billions of years of evolution for all of this to take shape, but most of the complexity in structure is only since mammals. The dinosaurs, or even the arthropods before that, didn't exactly have what we have in their skulls. But even what they had was quite the miracle. You could tally up such numbers and impressive features about almost any organ in the animal body. The eyes are a popular example. But the origin story would remain the same. If you give the processes of biological evolution millions of years, you're going to end up with some pretty spectacular results. But the other organs, or even other complicated objects outside our planet like black holes or quasars, still don't stand a chance in matching the brain across parameters of complexity. The brain is a one-of-a-kind object in the known universe, and hence deserves our fascination for it across several dedicated disciplines in its name. Philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, spirituality, and of course you could even make the argument that much of the social sciences is about the interaction of different brains with each other. At the end of the day, it's not just the big numbers that makes the brain impressive. It's that it adds entire new parameters of complexity, like consciousness, that gives it its street rep. Number 4. Emotional. Before modern neuroscience and psychology, philosophy and spirituality reigned supreme in matters of the brain. We had figured out even at the time of Hippocrates, the father of medicine, that the brain was the seat of the mind, but we obviously didn't know enough biology or medicine to do much with that information. So the study of the mind was the closest thing to the study of the brain. This wasn't necessarily such a bad approach, Because outside of medical interventions, you could actually learn a lot about the brain using the mind approach. The brain is, after all, a deeply emotional organ, in that consciousness is not just some random, passive, evolutionary byproduct, but rather is the driving force in the brain's life. Our emotions, both conscious and subconscious, likely matter more to the state of the brain than pretty much anything else. Somewhere in our evolutionary past, nature seems to have selected strongly for emotions. And so now we are stuck with a brain that deeply and tangibly responds to emotional stimuli. Before we explain the role of neurotransmitters and so on, philosophers and spiritual gurus have long understood the role emotional well-being has on both mind and body. In our journey to understand the brain, fMRI scans and dissections would likely never suffice. We would continue to need the support of our conscious, emotional experience for a well-rounded explanation of, well, the most important and complicated object in the known universe.